Hello, fiends, friends, and familiars. This is Matt Orozco from Macabre Daily, and I am joined by none other than the Sean O'Connor from Macabre Daily. Sean, how are you?
I'm good. Hey, everybody. Let's.
Oh, man. I'm so excited to talk about this. We are here doing a video review, which is something that we don't do very often in Macabre Daily, but sometimes we both watch a movie and we got to talk about it. I mean, isn't that what we do this for anyway?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the movie Ash, which is coming to theaters on this Friday, which is going to be March 21st from IFC Films, XY, and Shudder.
Hmm.
And this is directed by Flying Lotus. Stars Aaron Paul and Lisa Gonzalez. Flying Lotus is in it himself. So first things first, let's get to the synopsis real quick. So, for those that aren't familiar, Ash is a sci-fi film,
Hmm.
as we said, directed by Flying Lotus, and it star. Oh, I forgot to mention. I forgot to mention it stars Aaron Paul. How could we? How could
No,
we?
you got that. You
Did
did.
I get that? Okay. Well, it's been a day. But the synopsis from IMDb is as follows: A woman wakes up on a distant planet and finds the crew of her space station viciously killed. Her investigation into what happened sets in motion a terrifying chain of events. I've got chills. I've got space chills, Sean.
Space chills. No one can hear them. Oh
No.
no, no
Yeah,
one's gonna know you have those space chills.
space chills. No one can hear them. It's the silent killer. That's what they say. But let's get into this. So, real quick, like if you were to sum up your reaction to this film in 5 words or less, how would you describe it?
Oof. Okay. Oh, 5 words or
I know
less.
I'm putting you on the spot. I'm sorry. I'm going to try and vamp a
No,
little
it's
bit while you
okay.
can let the
I,
juices go. I mean, maybe you need that G&T. I don't know. I've got
I think
NA Brewdog. That's not a promotion. Sponsor me.
anyone who's watched me previously knows that 5 words or less is not my forte. But here it goes. Ready? Um. Okay. Movie for viewers unfamiliar with movies. All right,
Okay.
I went
It's
six.
six.
I
It's
went
okay.
six.
All right.
Yeah.
This is hard. Now the mirror is turned to myself and I have to put myself on the spot. So I'm not going to make this a sentence. It'll be trippy, visual. What the fuck? That's the
Okay.
and I'm curious to know what were your like preconceptions going into this because we've both seen the trailer. You know, there's been a little bit of promotion for it going into it. So what were you hoping to see based off of what you saw before you watched it?
Well, knowing Flying Lotus is a composer, and he had done a segment for VHS 99. I knew, and seeing the trailer, like you mentioned, I knew it was going to be trippy as hell. The visuals were in the trailer were pretty stunning. I liked it was a heavy use of, all the colors that we love in horror and sci-fi, deep greens, deep reds, electric blues. So seeing that and seeing the trailer, I had a feeling like, okay, this seems like it's going to be like a real mind bender with a little bit of creature feature sprinkled in because there was a little, it leaned into that in the trailer a little bit, but I'll give credit to the trailer that it left it ambiguous, and I love that because trailers these days just give away the farm. So
Right.
Flying Lotus, kudos for constructing a really great trailer. I wish it had rolled over into a great movie, but I know we'll unpack it. But that was my initial thought that I was very excited to see what the visuals were going to look like, and I was cautiously optimistic that there was going to be a story to back it up.
Yeah. I don't know if I had a lot of expectations per se because I think I agree that the trailer did such a good job of giving just enough to get you interested, but not enough to tell you what you're getting into.
Yeah.
And I think just in general, I find sci-fi horror, cosmic horror. It's not like where I put it at the top, but when it hits, it hits. So I think I'm naturally excited about it because we don't see a lot of it. I think sci again, sci-fi and horror is not the most common of the subgenres. So yeah, I wasn't sure what I was going to get, and I also felt pretty good from an expectation standpoint of like I don't have like a oh my God, I feel like I'm going to love this or oh, I'm going to hate this feeling. I just felt very neutral going into it.
Yeah.
So I think that's the best way to go into anything is kind of unbothered by the marketing as possible. So
Agree.
getting into what worked for you, what were things that you thought really excelled in the film?
Oh boy. Okay. What the visuals worked for me, the score worked for me.
Yeah,
The score was heavy Vangelis. I mean, damn near look, Flying Lotus cribs from a ton of sci-fi movies. In the third act, it actually becomes problematic because he just, it's just full-blown warehouse sale on, you know, taking
it's a
this.
fire sale.
Yeah, I mean, it turns into a Chinese restaurant menu, a little bit from column A, a little bit from column B. But what landed were some trippy visuals, the score. Look, the acting for what the characters have on the page, they all do fine. There's just not a lot on the page.
Yeah,
I mean, this is a thin, thin movie. I
yeah,
think Flying Lotus depend. He really leaned into the visuals, and I think he leaned into a vibe, which can work. For sure, it can work, but you you have to make it wholly original if you're going to depend on vibe. If you're cribbing from what came before, and fuck, Matt, I mean, we're talking like Planet of the Vampires before.
yeah,
Oh, ay Dios mío, you got to make it your own. So,
yeah.
that didn't. How about you?
I think I agree on all counts. I want that soundtrack now. Like, I actually remember hearing one of the songs as like a preview before the movie, before we got the screeners, and I was like, holy shit, this is my vibe. Like, this is like dark techno warehouse, but like very sci-fi vibey. And so
Yeah,
I think like Flying Lotus clearly knows what he's doing behind the production decks. And I think that is like the pulse of the movie. It's like I feel like if it didn't have that, even with the visuals and how great they are, that music is actually what keeps the pace more than anything else. And on the visual side, I think there's a lot of amazing images in here. I'll get to my problems with them, but I think the visuals themselves are just wildly impressive. They're not, it's clearly not real. It's clearly not a set, like we know this, but I think where we've reached is that the merging of practical set design and kind of CGI augmentation it's a really good example of what's possible when you have really strong production design that's complemented by CGI that doesn't take the place of the majority of the action or the effects work. Now, that said, I do agree the acting is great. I think Elisa Gonzalez is great. I think Aaron Paul is quite good. I give it more to Elisa than I would Aaron, just because I
yeah,
think
she
Aaron's
carries
character
the
is a bit
movie.
easier. Yeah, and
Yeah,
she's got a lot more to do. She's got a lot more as a character to kind of flesh out with her situation, amnesia, and like trying to figure out what's going on. But there's other actors in here who I liked seeing them, but I just wasn't sure like why are they here? So like Iko Uwais, who most people know from The Raid, amazing martial artist. Like I,
unbelievable.
it, yeah, he's like I think it's Salat is the name of the martial arts style that he practices because it's the Thai. It's not. I don't want to say it's Thai. Don't quote me there, but it is Southeast Asian of sorts. And but when you see him like doing what he does here, and I guess we'll get into this is just the natural progression, right? Is like what we didn't work is like he's not this isn't a kung fu movie, um, but there's kung fu in it, and it's really cool, really
Because
cool,
he's in it, there's kung fu in it.
right? And it's cool. Like it's not like it's unfun. It's not like it's not entertaining. It's just like you kind of said. It's like this is all the things
Yeah,
mixed into a blender. Um, and then beyond that, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Like the plot. So there is one, but it's told in such a non-linear and confusing way when it actually would have served better if it was told in a linear story. Like
100%. Don't you get the feeling that, oh, Matt, hang on one sec. I just have to look up who wrote it. So it's Joni Remler wrote the screenplay, and I feel
mm,
like I'm sorry, Johnny. I feel like Johnny got to the third act, and it's that cliche. If you
yeah,
have third act problems, you have first act problems, actually. Johnny got to the third act and was like, "Oh man, we got to wrap this up." And it just everything goes, it's just the kitchen sink mentality of like, "All right, here's everything. Here's all the
Yeah.
things." You know? And I agree with you. If this was told in a linear fashion, A, it would have made sense, and B, it would have been more engaging. Let me ask you a question. We'll start unpacking some of the problems or the problems with the film. Do you know what anyone does in this movie?
No.
And,
I but
and wait. I'll make this even easier. Compare this because Flying Lotus is cribbing the crew mess scene from Alien with the crew mess scene, as do so many sci-fi films.
yeah.
You knew what every single person in Alien did, what their job was, what their personality was, what their motivation was, except for Ash, very purposefully. Do you know what anyone fucking does in this movie?
No. And I think that's part of the problem is like the only person that has a distinct role is Aaron Paul as Brian. And
Yeah,
and when I say distinct, what I mean is like he lives on another spaceship.
yeah,
And so like his job is to, I guess, make sure that the people on the planet are doing what they're it's somewhat unclear. And as we start to get to the
ish.
end,
Yeah,
there's all this like, again, cribbing from the Alien franchise, this corporate espionage, like what's going on, there and beyond that, like my takeaway was that they're essentially, I don't know if they're scientists or like they're farmers, like are they terraformers? Like it's not clear. And I don't even know if you need to give them distinct roles to the extent that like they all play, because even an Alien, like they all have different purposes they serve, but at the end of the day, like it's not their individual purpose that matters. It's that they all have, what you said, like personality,
yeah.
that we get to know them. And like in this, it's very contained because you really only get to know Brian and Raya. Oh, but the rest of the characters that come into, like, who they are, like the captain, but like nothing about the captain.
And you only know he's the captain because they call him Cap. If they
Right.
weren't calling him Cap, he'd just be someone sitting at the table.
He does have a spiffy zip up suit though. Like that
What did
tracksuit, it's nice.
again? I mean, they're cribbing the
Yeah.
gear that they have. I mean, I can appreciate that. There's a scene there. I won't give any spoilers away, but there's supposed to be an emotional scene in the third act between Eliza Gonzalez and her partner. But there's no relationship set up in the first act. So there's no emotional stakes to it. You're just like, oh,
Right.
okay. All right. Well, you had to do that. I guess that sucked for you, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even know if you like this person. Can I tell you my I'll give Flying Lotus a little bit of cover because you can feel the enthusiasm
Yeah.
of I like all the things. It's like when you have a friend who discovers like late 80s punk and
Yeah.
they can't stop talking about it and they're like, Have you ever listened to Clash and MC5 and television?" And you're like, "Yeah, for
Wait, have
40
you heard
years."
White Riot? Like,
Yeah.
have you heard White Riot?
And they're just like, "This is amazing." And you're like, "We know.
Yeah.
We've been enjoying it for decades, plural." So you get that feeling that he's just like, "I discovered all these things." And I don't know if this is true, but it's that feeling of like, "Have you guys seen The Thing? It's rad. Have you guys seen Alien? Oh my God. How about Ghosts of Mars?" And you're like, yeah. And you put all of that shit in your movie and it makes it wholly unoriginal, but I appreciate the enthusiasm, but the execution just went sideways.
Yeah, and I think that's what happens sometimes when like you are, and I think it's good. I think it's fair to give Flying Lotus a little bit more credit than it is to like discredit in this, and that he's clearly inspired by the genre and all the films that have made it great.
And I love
He's
that.
clearly, yeah, he does a good job of putting it in his own words. Like we know what he's cribbing from, but it's not like he's doing it so egregiously that we're like, that's a xenomorph,
Yeah.
or like that's Event Horizon. But at the same time, you can't just homage for homage sake. You have to like put your own spin on it in a way that, and again, putting your own spin, it means like telling a complete story, making characters that you care about. I mean, even Raya, like Elisa Gonzalez's performance is outstanding, but her character itself is not as interesting as it could be. And I think some of that has to do with the fact that there's an amnesia angle, which to me is always like, you gotta be real careful with that stuff because it's such a logic. It's there's so many logical loopholes that can occur from that scenario that if
Yeah.
you're not really careful with your scripting, um, you're going to run into some problems. And to that end, I think where you see Flying Lotus's kind of signature on this is if you go back to his short for VHS 99, it's so in your face visually that you're kind of overwhelmed by the nostalgia of like that 90s like Nickelodeon fucked up show that he did. And that's kind of the same thing here. It's like, wow, this is like if I took acid and watched all the sci-fi movies at once, that's what this would be.
Yeah.
And I kind of was telling you before we started, like, kind of wish I popped an adult gummy to watch this thing because the lack of the pacing itself doesn't lend itself, or the pacing doesn't lend itself to like a lot of action. Like in Alien, the buildup is progressive, but you're never bored.
No.
And I actually remember at one point, like, I paused it for, just to go to the bathroom, and like it was 45 minutes in, and I felt it had been an hour.
Hell yeah. I did the
And I,
same damn thing. The same thing. I hit pause to go get something to drink, and I was like, are you fucking kidding me that there's another hour left of this movie? Because I felt at that point it was starting to slog a bit. So there's huge second act problems too. The
what's your
amnesia.
theory on why that is, though? Like, because my thought is that I think because there's such like the visuals and the editing, especially, are so eclectic
Yeah.
that you feel like a lot more time passes because you're tricked into thinking that you're seeing action. When what you're really just seeing is like trippy visuals and really slick editing and editing process.
Well, to your point, it's the screenwriting trap of the amnesia angle. Because what happens, like you said, you have to be super careful because it becomes a wash, rinse, repeat. Because the character is experiencing all these things and then they're taken back. Do I know this? Do I not know this? Am I familiar with this? Am I not? And it just becomes it's Groundhog's Day. And it can be
Mhm.
done in a very interesting fashion, or it can just be the wash, rinse, repeat. And that's the whole second act. Then you get the introduction of Aaron Paul, which is great because it adds stakes and it adds mystery, and you're like, all right, what's happening here and who can we trust? And I like that. But again, it falls flat because there's just not enough going on besides those visuals. There's not
Yep.
enough interesting storytelling going on. And then we do get to that third act, and then it's just like, release the hounds, and everything happens all at once. And it's just like on this sped up conveyor belt until the conclusion. And it's not earned. And
Yeah.
oh, all right, man, I got a big problem though. And this is for all screenwriters out there and directors. If you are going to Chekhov's surgery tool for the fourth time, you have fucking script
You
problem,
got to use it. Yeah.
you know? So it's just put that out there.
But there's a lot of there's a lot of talent behind this that I think,
Yeah.
deserves some credit. Like I think Hannah Wilson was on the makeup department. I mean, there is some outstanding makeup and production design work. I
There's
mean,
skill here for sure. For
yeah, and
sure.
like Richard Bluck does the cinematography, and just to give you a sense of his background, like his resume. He was on the Two Towers. He was on Avatar. He wasn't the DOP, but like he was working with the folks. He was the DOP for What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah.
So like the guy, there's a lot of chops in this movie, and I don't know, and I think they all do their part well. But to what we've talked about, the way that the script itself is not, it's a short story that is put into a feature film,
Yeah.
and I go back to the nonlinear storytelling because that only works if you can convince the audience that they're going to be surprised continuously. But I'll be honest, like I knew like from the jump that what was going to end up, like I didn't know exactly what was going to happen the way it did because there are some surprises, but I kind of know the culprit. Like I was like, I didn't really buy some of the, you know, who did this thing. I'm like, it feels very obvious. Based on how they're setting it up. And so I think there's just if you would have told this in a more direct way, because if you think about the plot points, it's there. But if you build it up from, let's say, like they get to this planet, they discover these things start to change, and then you get to that ending. It's like that ending feels much more earned because you build towards it,
Yeah.
as opposed to going back and forth between these scenes that are kind of like, you know, flashbacks of something exciting happening, but you never get the full gist of it. And then when you get at the end, again, it just feels like they had to throw that in there.
Can I ask you a question? Did you see the movie Life with Gyllenhaal and Ryan Reynolds, Rebecca Ferguson?
Yes, that was the one with like the little microorganism, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
similar. Again, no spoilers, similar, but that movie's told in a linear fashion. And compared to Ash, that movie works tremendously well. Because you do get that arc and then you get a very, very good payoff at the end. I landed at the same place you did. I knew exactly where this was going to end up. I just didn't know how we were going to get there. And then as a moviegoer, then you're just kind of like ticking minutes by because you're like, oh,
yeah,
okay. I want to back up everything that you said, though. There's tremendous skill to this movie, the visuals, the score, the editing, the cinematography. I hate to put this all at Johnny's feet. It's just a weak script, you
yeah.
know? But hey, look, they got this movie made, and that's a tremendous achievement in and of itself. Um, it's got some really amazing visuals, and it's not a waste of time, but it just could have. It's disappointing because you see the enthusiasm, you see the skill behind it, and they can't pull it off.
And it makes me wonder, like, would this have served better as maybe or an art house piece where like it actually doesn't have a plot and it just runs on the vibes and the visuals and the score and has a lot less dialogue and just more because I think the format and I think Flying Lotus has a really good eye for visual audio visual. Like, how do you make like his synthy score feels like the waves in the sky that you're seeing. Like
Yeah,
and so I think his ability to do that speaks more to him as an artist as opposed to like a narrative filmmaker. So part of me wonders if like if this maybe started as a short where he just was kind of like playing around with some ideas and it started just very ethereal and then you kind of have to make it a feature, right? And I think pushing this to 90 minutes is like it's not like 90 minutes is a bad runtime for this movie. It's just the way they spend that time makes breaks up the pacing so that it never really kind of propels until the end. And then by that point, you're like, well, it's about time.
this could have been a killer segment for VHS, to be honest,
Yeah,
you know? So, look, they gave it their best. It didn't necessarily get across the finish line. It's certainly not a waste of time. People are going to
no.
check it out because they're Flying Lotus fans and they're going to want to see the trippy visuals, which there's certainly plenty of. I can dine out all day on that red, blue, green color aesthetic. I
Yeah.
just, I just
I mean,
love it.
I think it looks better. Like, people like to give a lot of praise to Color Out of Space for the really interesting hues of purple, but like I found that to be almost obnoxious. I'm
Yeah,
like, it looks like the goo in fucking Ghostbusters 2, and I'm hoping the Statue of Liberty is gonna bust out and step on Nicolas Cage, like. So in this, like, I thought this was a very good use of cosmic visuals, and I do think that if people should see this, if you see it, watch it in a theater or watch it in like the dark
yeah.
with your sound system turned up because this really is like the kind of thing that will engulf. I think in a theater, I imagine I might have liked this a little better
It's going to be more
because,
immersive for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I think that sound and the way things look it's so clean but not overly glossy, and the music. I mean, I will be buying it if this comes out on record. It's an instant buy for me. I want this in my ears.
It's got to. Matt, there is an actual piano chord in the score.
Yeah.
It's like the ballsiest thing ever because it is so synth and it's like classical and synth. And then just to make a point, you get that like old traditional horror movie "Gah!" with the piano. And I was just like, oh, God, Flying Lotus.
I mean, he's clearly like I mean, his no one will question his chops as a musician, as a composer. And I actually don't think he should stay there. Like, I don't like sometimes I think people tend to say stay in your lane on some folks, and it's like, no, like he clearly has a knack for telling stories. I think maybe like to your point, finding a better script writer that could maybe give him something that's more direct, and then he can add his visual and audio flair to it. And I hope he keeps making movies because I do think that there's a like again he has a vision. It's not it's unique. I mean, if you look at the way this look and the VHS 99 segment look, they are very unique, and then and how they're presented. I mean, this one's a bit more on the nose with its references, but
I
I I want to see more of him.
I would love to see what he could do with a single location gothic haunted house movie.
Ooh,
You know, let's because I think he tends to lean more toward the modernist and the sci-fi and the futuristic. I want to take that away from him and see
Mm.
what he can do in a gothic setting with that kind of score, with the heavy atmosphere of dread. I'd buy a ticket for that right now. So I agree with you. I hope he keeps making movies. I think this is it's just great practice. You know, he's got a
Yeah.
90-minute feature under his belt now, and let's see what he can do next.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that, like, while we may not have, loved the movie, it's not a bad movie.
No,
um,
no.
and I think there will be people that'll see this who will really get a kick out of it, and it
Hell,
might end up being someone's favorite movie because of how beautiful it looks and how good it sounds. So
100%. And the acting, and they're going to love the actors in it as well. It's got a really great cast. So I'm with you. I think this is going to end up on some people's radar, and they're really going to dig it. Yeah, I
yeah,
hope they
release
do.
the LP, Flying Lotus. I dare you. But yeah, that's our review of Ash. And again, to remind everyone watching this, because we know you watch these videos to the end, we just know it, is that you can see Ash in theaters on the 21st of March. And we don't have a Shudder release date yet, but I feel pretty good in saying that it's going to end up on Shudder, considering the studio's backing this.
Oh,
So give it maybe 3 months, couple months, who knows?
I'd say late spring, early summer. You're probably going to get Ash on Shutter for sure.
Yeah, but catch
Ben
this in the theater if
Zimmerman,
you can.
do you hear us?
Yeah. All right. Well, everybody, this is Matt Orozco
Sean O'Connor,
from Macabre Daily, and we're checking out. And be good, stay safe, watch some horror movies.
you got it. Take care,
Adios.
man. It's good seeing you.